people gathered in this room today work to help students move efficiently through post-secondary education. We help students transfer their credit from one institution to another. We help build articulated pathways from one credential to another. And we work to identify and remove barriers to student mobility. We do this because ultimately students have a place they want to go. They want to get jobs. When ONCAT was founded, one of the goals articulated by government was for ONCAT to help accelerate entry or re-entry to the labor market. And we're making good progress against the goal. The intention of this plenary is to have expert panelists share their perspectives on the most promising and effective strategies to support labor market integration and how their own organizations and work intersects with this goal. So we're going to leave about 20 minutes for questions from the floor after the panel discussion, but let's start with a quick introduction of the panelists. So your name, your role, and a few words about your organization. Start with you, Andrew.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Andrew Beeler, I'm Director of Partnerships at the Business and Higher Education Roundtable. So if you're not familiar with us, we're a not-for-profit, nonpartisan organization that brings together Canada's leading post-secondaries and employers. Since 2015, we've been bringing together universities, colleges, and some of Canada's leading employers to strengthen alignment on skills and talent, to make headway on research and innovation and other areas. Our goal is to create a thriving Canada where everyone has the opportunity to reach their potential. And I lead our national WIL program with post-secondaries and employers across Canada. Pleased to be here. I'll chat a little bit more about the WIL program during the panel, I'm sure.
Thank you. Catherine.
Hi, Adrian. My name is Heather McIntosh. I'm the Associate Director of Education and Skills at the Conference Board of Canada. So I lead a practice where we deliver insights, evidence, and research on what's happening in Canada when it comes to education. A lot of our work right now is focused on things like the future of work, skills, and training, and finding ways to provide insights not only to post-secondary leaders, but also to government and other stakeholders to help navigate, the changing landscape of work. And that a big part of that, of course, is post-secondaries and working closely with them. And the Conference Board more broadly, if you haven't heard of us, we offer applied research. Our name can be a bit confusing because we don't do a lot of conferences anymore. We largely do just deliver research, but we do have some convening activities like executive councils, and we do research in a variety of areas like immigration, Indigenous and Northern communities, sustainability, human capital, and we do a lot of economic forecasting and research. Looking forward to chatting with you all today.
Hi everyone, my name is Vaishnavi. I am the Director of Customer Success at FutureFit. FutureFit is a technology organization based here in Toronto. At the core of our offerings, we have a job seeker portal meant to support those looking to navigate their careers. Primarily what the platform does is we take information from job seekers like their work experience, education experience, interests, and then on the back end, we take labor market information in real time, like in-demand careers. And then the output is really career pathways that best fit job seekers' interests. And we sort of help them get from point A to point B by providing them with learnings and resources that are best fit for their needs. We're working with a variety of organizations here in Ontario, like local governments, not-for-profits, and larger corporations as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarana Sandy, and I'm the CEO of Skills for Change. I've been with the organization for about 11 years. And Skills for Change is 41 years old. It's a registered charity. We initially started delivering programming in the Greater Toronto area, but we're national now. We focus on skills development, training, and social service delivery for immigrants, refugees, and underserved groups. In particular, it's about workforce development. It's a primary focus of what we do. And we partner with post-secondary education institutions to do that. Our partners have included and do include currently TMU, Mohawk College, Humber College, and George Brown College for vocational and technical skills training for immigrants and refugees, with the focus on faster labor market attachment rate in opportunities that are with wage parity to Canadian-born and educated professionals. And that's very, very critical for us as we focus on the newcomer wage gap and challenges, and we also focus on ensuring that the skills and knowledge that newcomers bring to Canada is recognized and valued in the labor market through the bridging opportunities that we have and the collaboration and training that we do with other partners.
Thank you. So we're all coming at this support of students into the labor market from different angles. We're on the pathways, we've got tech represented, working with clients in the community, the research and insight that Conference Board is bringing in, and the connection between employers and business and students. I'm interested in you sharing a little bit more with the audience about some of the strategies that your organization is using to help bridge that gap between the education and the workplace. So I'm going to start with Andrew.
Sure. So, we do a biannual skills survey with Canada's leading employers. We're in a data collection year. We've been tracking longitudinally for many years. Some of the changes with in-demand skills in Canada's labor market. So if you look at our last skills survey, you'll see, employers are expecting more and more of recent grads, right? They want those increasingly specialized technical skill sets alongside the human skills, the social and emotional skills. And so, some of the top skills are technical, interpersonal, problem solving, communication, resiliency. What we're seeing in the longitudinally is that it's really hard to make progress in terms of strengthened graduate outcomes on those social and emotional skills. And this informs a lot of our perspective and our efforts with our National Will program, where we're trying to strengthen outcomes not only in the technical skills, but in communication, problem solving, et cetera. So through our National Will program, our goal ultimately, because we know Will works when it comes to SES outcomes, our goal is to ensure every student, regardless if you're international student, if you're a rural student, regardless of your background, every student gets an opportunity to do a Will opportunity during the course of their first degree or diploma, whether you're at college, university, regardless. So over the last 5 years, we've delivered 58,000 Will opportunities to students. Our perspective really is trying to scaffold learning for employability throughout the degree pathway. And I think there's a lot of alignment with ONCAT's work. We're trying to ensure, early in their degree, students get those innovative, non-placement based opportunities to work on industry projects so they can reflect, pivot their careers, their academic journeys in appropriate ways, and work towards more intensive exposure to the workplace as they progress through their degree and into the labor market. We're seeing some really strong outcomes based on the first 5 years, and continuing to push forward to resource essentially collaborations between post-secondaries and industry groups. Some examples on that front, we've been working closely with Tech Alliance and Western University in London, Ontario to strengthen talent pipelines for the tech sector. In Manitoba, we're working closely with Red River College to ensure Indigenous-led firms have access to talent in that region. We have partnerships across the country. Keen to chat and learn more about what you're doing. Our focus is on delivering Will. Of course, as a convener, we bring together colleges, universities, and employers. We're always looking for new ways to tackle alignment between post-secondary and the labor market. There are other challenges, of course, related to access, related to upskilling that we work on as well, but I largely work on the Will partnerships.
I'm going to go off script and ask you a follow-up question. So a student taking a degree in philosophy, for example, asking for a friend, what kind of work integrated learning experiences do you see for students taking those broad undergraduate humanities, social sciences courses?
It's a great question. So access to work integrated learning for students in the social sciences, arts, and humanities is one of the major challenges, actually, to reaching 100% Will. Those programs don't have Will opportunities integrated intentionally into the curriculum from the get-go, and students all too often are relying on co-curricular opportunities where they may have to, say, work fewer hours in order to make time for a Will opportunity. We don't want to see that. We don't want to force students to choose between work and Will. Ultimately, And so we're going to be releasing a report on exactly this topic in the coming year. We've got, so the Western and Tech Alliance example is quite nice because what we're doing there is we're integrating projects from small and medium-sized employers in the London region, working closely with Tech Alliance, local chamber, into large first and second year courses in the social sciences. So I think like media studies, this kind of thing. It could be, I'm not sure if philosophy is there, I'll have to double check, but those kinds of disciplines. And so the idea is to give students, in those disciplines, some initial industry exposure to think, oh, okay, like maybe with this philosophy degree, I could work in a tech startup. What would that be like? Is it for me? To think through those kinds of opportunities and work towards like a professional identity.
Thank you.
And I do want to just speak to that, to the philosophy, your friend that you're speaking of, right? And just when I think about ONCAT, articulation and transfer, I really think about articulation. And coming from a city of Ottawa, right, we've got a large employer, right? And you often have, I don't work for the feds, but having lived in the city long enough, there are just so many opportunities. And you speak to someone who's had a long journey. I'm going to just use this as an example as a public servant. I did an undergrad in philosophy, and then I did a master's in interpretive dance. But I found this, there's bridging programs and whatnot that you can do sort of similar like will opportunities. And I think what it is yes, in a city like Ottawa, you often find a lot of people who have that opportunity to really navigate with so many different job opportunities. I know that's not everywhere, but that comes up so often. And what I think it really comes down to is helping students articulate, right, those skills that they gain when they do go through that philosophy degree, because they could actually make an amazing, or they will make an amazing public servant or this or that, right? I'm using that because I'm coming from Ottawa, right? But I think there's just, it's finding a way to support students to understand what their skills are that they're training. Just because you don't have an engineering degree, which is very prescriptive in what you have, doesn't mean you don't have a very strong, clear skill set. But I think we typically have a harder time teaching those social science and humanities grads, for example, how to really articulate those things on a resume, in a job interview. So I really think those types of training opportunities, which I think they're all of our work, right? There are so many different stakeholders in being able to support that. But I think will obviously being critical, but I think also that articulation piece is really, really key. And employers, post-secondary leaders can really, really support in supporting people with those, getting ready to fly, right, in the job market.
I couldn't agree more, Heather. It makes me think of Concordia's Fusion program.
Right, yes, yes.
A really important skills articulation related project supported by Future Skills Center. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. Skills articulation has to be top of mind.
This is a great setup for...
Like you took all my talking points.
No, but maybe you can tell specifically how Future Fit tackles this.
For sure. So there is this notion that there's a really, really large skills gap, which is what we're talking about here. Is there a skills gap? Yes, there will perpetually be a skills gap given at the pace that technology is evolving. With that said, there are millions of job seekers out there with millions of skills that fill the jobs that exist today. What they might not have are the credentials, and to your point, the ability to speak to their skills properly. I have a minor in philosophy, and I work at a tech startup. Someone looked at my degree and decided, okay, maybe she can talk, maybe she can do project management. They looked at my skills and decided I was a good fit for a job like this. What Future Fit is really doing is we're allowing folks to tell us everything about their experience, not just their education, not just their job, their internships, their volunteer work, their projects that they've worked on. And what we're doing is we're pulling from millions of skills that we have in our backlog that are actually needed for jobs that are in demand today. We're helping them tell a compelling story using these skills and then connecting them with the jobs that exist. So when your daughter is ready to go into the workforce, she could upload her philosophy degree into the platform and be connected with jobs that are actually looking for those specific skills. I think the other piece of the puzzle that we should be talking about is employers who need to be focused on skills-based hiring. And apart from the job seeker portal, FutureFit also has an employer portal where we're enabling employers to really connect with people based on skills, not just their degrees, really.
And I'd like to get Sarana into the conversation now because you deal with the clients every day, and or your organization does.
Yes, thank you. One of the key things that we do in terms of trying to get folks close to the labor market, we focus a lot on the employers. We have about 12 staff members who only engage with employers, and we work with employers on a key thing. It's not just about hiring. We deliver about 40 different programs to about 20,000 clients per year. And a lot of them are training programs, so the employers are advisory committee members. They involve in curriculum design and review with us and our academic partners to ensure that the skills that we're helping to build within our clients is skills that the labor market is interested in. We embed mentorship as part of that, so they have an understanding and connection to people who are already in the labor market to have those conversations and support as they look to transfer their skills. Additionally, we have about 40 career practitioners, and their work is to all the clients who come through who are action plans around skills development and job search, to really work with them to do full-scale career assessments, skills assessment, gap analysis, and to help them identify the development opportunities that exist within our organization or at post-secondary education institutions in the Greater Toronto Area, and now nationally since we are now in additional provinces. And that allows us to ensure that our clients are not just looking and considering job search, but it's about career planning and development and the continual learning and capacity building they would have to do in terms of ensuring that their skills are relevant, consistently evolving to meet the needs of the labor market. And that's really critical for us, and we found successes by working with employer partners, by responding to their particular needs, by embedding those in the curriculum that we develop. We are actually preparing individuals who are better ready for the labor market. And we round that out through the cross-cultural communication, which is allowing them to now take the technical or vocational training that we provide to them, meld that with the soft skills, cross-cultural communication, engagement, understanding of the Canadian labor market, and to be fully job ready. And we find it has resulted in high retention rate, greater labor market attachment rate, and greater job satisfaction for those newcomers that we're working with.
Thank you. Is post-secondary education, are we doing enough to help students understand what their labor market goal is? Or how to fit into the labor market? Whoever wants to jump in on this one, and I'm open to the comment that that's not the role of, especially on the university side. Maybe that's not our job, but interested in your perspective on whether or not our institutions are doing enough to help students.
Yeah, maybe I can jump in here. I think there is a lot to be done. There's a lot of different pieces. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. Everyone can't be doing everything, and I think we're doing our best. The other piece to really talk about here is the labor market is constantly evolving. We've said that a couple of times, and my role, the customer success role, didn't really exist 5 years ago. It's a new role that came up, and now it's so pivotal at every tech organization. So while you can do everything you can to support students, how do you really keep up with that changing labor market? And really understanding what's going on is a big part of the puzzle. So technology companies and folks like ONCAT that provide these folks with the necessary resources to keep up with the changing labor market are really, really, really important. We've talked a little bit about the FutureFit job seeker platform. One thing we're doing is keeping an up-to-date database of in-demand careers. You can't be reading about what careers are in demand every single day. You don't have the time to do that. And it's really important to be leaning on the technology that exists today to keep up with that information so you can support students with real-time information.
I'll jump in. I agree, that's super important, making LMI more accessible to students and useful in their academic and career decision making. And we have some partnerships on that front to help students who are preparing for a work integrated learning opportunity make appropriate choices around upskilling, around those placements themselves and how to prepare. So more broadly though, there's a pretty wide spectrum in the institutions that we collaborate with and that we support in terms of stronger labor market outcomes. Some of our priorities include strengthening will services to employers, so that essentially employers have better access to talent, and it's a little easier to work with institutions through funding, for instance, like industry liaison functions within institutions. We've been working with Red River College, for instance, to strengthen coordination of services to employers on that front. In general, what I would say, in my opinion, on this front is that we still tend to think a little bit too much about learning for employability as an add-on concern to the curriculum, as opposed to really mainstreaming it by a support for and integration across student services, co-op and career services, and faculty when it comes to curriculum development. There are some strong international models where that can be really mainstreamed, and there's a spectrum, I think, of where institutions are at in Canada, but it's a long journey, I think.
If I can jump in, I think what a key thing that post-secondary education institutions should really do is to create a clear role for employers as part of a learning environment. And as they're building curriculum, as they're building course content, they really should be looking at what does the labor market need? What is the role of employers in helping to co-design these training opportunities so they're responsive to the needs of the labor market? The other thing I think is critical in building on the importance of labor market information, but it's ensuring that labor market information is accessible. We all consume, I'm sure you consume labor market information. It is not accessible. It's not, it's presented in a way that you can use and apply into making decisions. So am I giving labor market information just so you're aware? Am I giving you information that you can then consume and analyze and make decisions using that data? I think that's really important. And we should really be helping students from the start of their learning journey to understand how to utilize that labor market information throughout the decision-making process, whether it's through courses or the co-ops I decide to choose, the mentorship I'm seeking out, the type of technology or tools that I'm learning. I'm responding to that with the use of labor market information. I think that's very, very key. I think lastly, as educations and institutions, I think we need to help the learners, whatever their age, to really be comfortable with change and transition. And that is actually a huge part of your toolkit as you navigate careers. I started off in human resources. I have an MBA in HRM, and I thought that's where we're going to be for the rest of my career. And things shift, and I pivoted and started studying leadership and transitioned into a completely different pathway of leading an organization drastically. And then recently I went back to school, third master's degree in sustainable development, because it is personally interesting, but there's a lot of opportunities that are available in that. So I think we need to be able to infuse that real passion for continual learning and skill enhancements and development in order to remain competitive in the labor market. I think that's going to be critically important.
Do you want to jump in?
Sure, sure, yeah. I mean, are post-secondaries doing enough? I think the way that I come at it is thinking about, when I think about what can we be doing more of, how should we be looking at this, is maybe it's not enough as in looking at it from a sense of like volume, but I think it's like finding ways to target changes that are gonna have high impact. And so I think, for example, the pace of change in the labor market and the jobs that maybe your daughter, we're thinking about she could have in 5 years, like they might not even exist, right? Like let's even think about the introduction of, ChatGPT, like there's so much change. And so I think it's less about like, are we doing enough? I think it's about like, are we willing and are we comfortable to change our perspectives on things? Are we willing to change the pace of how we do things? That might be really uncomfortable. Program development, depending on where you are in the PSI space, can take years. Well, guess what? Like, we don't necessarily always have the time to really create responsive programs to labor market needs in the timeline that we've typically done in higher education. That can be uncomfortable. I suggest that we might need to become comfortable with changes to how we develop programs, the timelines, the information that we use to inform program development. For example, at the conference board, we use vicinity jobs data. Any show of hands, anyone's familiar with Vicinity? Because I just don't want to be talking to this. Okay, so I won't get too technical, but essentially it's a tool that is it scrapes all Canadian job postings in Canada, and using artificial intelligence, it's allowed to, it can, through natural language processing, pick out keywords that are being consistently asked of in job postings in Canada. Now, of course, there are some limitations to that, but it largely can give you a snapshot of what's going on, what's being needed. And you can see, for example, uptick in recent years of things like cybersecurity skills, right? Like you can see through this database how, emerging needs in the labor market really need to be responded to. And then when you think about, I'm going to use cybersecurity as an example because it's coming from tech, things are happening so rapidly. We also know that the threat of cybersecurity is becoming, such a huge concern for large businesses in Canada and small. And you think about, well, how do we train the people, right? There are thousands of vacancies that we see that are going unfilled. And so I think what it comes down to is, are we doing enough? I agree. We're doing the best we can. I think if we want to change, to do more, to do better, I think it's more about thinking about strategically what are the specific areas that can have high impact and high outcomes or strong outcomes for students. And I think those are things like being uncomfortable with changing maybe the pace at which we go through things, again, being more responsive and connected to labor market information and employers, and really that paradigm shift of thinking about employability as the main piece in mind, whether you're whatever type of institution you're at.
Thank you. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Canada's going to bring in 500,000 new Canadians every year. We're starting to think about that new reality. We had previously at ONCAT been focused only on credits and pathways earned in Ontario or between Ontario institutions. So we're changing our database. We'll be including those international equivalencies and international pathways. But I'm interested in what your thoughts are and how we integrate new Canadians to come to Canada. It's a point system on education and experience, and then they get here and they're frustrated because that's not acknowledged. What could we be doing as organizations to help facilitate that transition into the labor market? I'll start with Andrew. Looks eager to answer this question.
It's a great one because we're working hard on this one. About a third of our WIL students are international students, and this has been a priority for all of our members for quite some time. So an example of one of the ways that we're working on this challenge is through really stronger integration of career development supports and WIL programming. So through a partnership, for instance, with the University of Ottawa that we recently formed, we'll be delivering education on the Canadian labor market alongside sort of preparatory training tailored to sort of the unique needs and backgrounds of international students. So whether that's cross-cultural communication, sort of along the lines of what Sarana was talking about a minute ago, related kind of programming to address some of the barriers that international students have faced. But then also trying to tackle the challenge that what we see is a lot of international students are making this unfortunate choice of choosing work unrelated to their academic studies over WIL opportunities. So what we've done through about a half dozen partnerships, including with the University of Ottawa, is to allow for more flexible work integrated learning opportunities during the degree so that international students don't have to make those kinds of choices that can be detrimental to aligning their academic and career goals. So really integrating career development supports with work integrated learning throughout the degree. Program flexibility, really essential here. And obviously, PLAR has to be a kind of a foundation, and I think the work you're doing on that front is really crucial. So a few thoughts.
I think this one hits a little bit closer to home for me. I immigrated here when I was 9. Both my parents had postgraduate degrees in accounting and law. They worked at KFC for about 4 years before they found an office job. And I'm happy to say things have come a long way since then, and there's a lot of support available for newcomers, but there's obviously still a lot of work to do. I think first and foremost, one of the most important things we need to help people that are coming into the country is to tell a compelling story. We work with a lot of employment service providers in Ontario that support newcomers to sit down with them, look at their past experience from home, and help them put together their experience on paper so they can find the right opportunities for themselves and not work in these short-term temporary jobs and find a long-term career. I think the second piece is making something like skills-based hiring easier for employers, showing employers that by going down the route of skills-based hiring and not looking for credentials specifically, they might find better fit employees. They might find talent even faster than they are today. And I think those two things are really, really important. But with that said, I do think we've come a long, long way from 10 years ago.
If I could jump in. So as someone whose organization was explicitly created 41 years ago to help immigrants and refugees settle and integrate in Canada, I was hoping I could work my way out of a job. I've been there for 11 years, and it's possible that I probably will not be able to work my way out of a job in terms of as it relates to immigrants and refugees being able to utilize those skills. And I think one of the biggest issues is that we put all the responsibility on the immigrant and no responsibility on those gatekeepers and decision makers and hiring managers and companies, big and small, to change their perspective and their values as it relates to international talent and skills. We should start there and stop having that burden on that newcomer who went through a very thorough screening process in order to come to Canada, because they need to have that education level and skills and vetted multiple times and pay tons of money to move to Canada and then to land and say, I know we told you that was very important, I know we told you that we needed that, but we changed our mind. You need to restart. So we need to change as a society what we value. And I always say the fact that a newcomer comes to Canada and Canada did not invest in them. Another country invested in socializing them, educating them, and we've now get to reap the benefit of that. No investment in elementary education, secondary education, post-secondary education, and socializing them to be a valuable producer and community member. We get to benefit, and we are ignoring it to our detriment. And it costs us billions of dollars per year. So those 500,000 persons who are going to be welcome to Canada should be provided with the information to ensure that they can transition very well. Yes. But we as Canadian society have to shift in terms of what we value and how we value them and create opportunities for them to utilize their skills and knowledge in the labor market to help contribute to Canada. If we do not do that, new legislation as proposed recently by the provincial government to remove Canadian experience as a barrier, not going to be valuable. Because you may not say it in the job description, but your practices will allow you to not bring that newcomer in. Because over 5 years ago, the Ontario Human Rights Commission have a policy statement that you could not ask for Canadian experience, and you could not use that as part of a decision-making process. We didn't see a change. So I'm not sure if we legislate it, if we simply put the burden on the individual immigrant is going to make any major shift. I think as a society, we need to do that.
Very well said. I'd build on that within the student talent space. What we're hearing in that space is that there's a desire for skills-based hiring, to your point. We're also hearing that small and medium-sized enterprises in particular need and have asked for more support when it comes to equity, diversity, and inclusion considerations, including in relation to international talent. And so that's something we're trying to address in partnerships. And then, to get a little bit more specific, the research we've done in international students shows that one of the most interesting barriers faced there on the employer side is just intercultural competency on the part of supervisors taking on students during placement. So, training to address those cross-cultural communication barriers that you were so eloquently speaking about, that has to be the employer too, to your point. And I think we need to find ways to resource and support that work so that students are supported during placements.
Thank you. So in a previous life, I had a responsibility to think about new programs at an institution. And we've touched on this a little bit about how do you how do you know what's coming? And we don't know what's coming in 5 years. What about, and you're all in this space as well, how do we go about that? How do we make sure we are thinking about students, giving them those experiences they need to meet an undefined job market 4 years, 3 years after graduation? So I'm interested in any strategies or tools your organization is using.
I mean, I can start.
Yeah, thank you.
So what we offer is we're constantly trying to find ways to better understand what's happening in the labor market, to not only share that information with post-secondary institutions, for program development, but also to let government and other key stakeholders know what's coming down the tube, what do we need to prepare for, and how can we do that, right? So we release a quarterly report we called the Emerging Skills Series. So we release a quarterly report that drawing on, as I said, the vicinity jobs data, where we analyze what we're seeing by Canadian employers in terms of emerging skills needs in the country. And we analyze, what is the skill that we're seeing emerging? Where regionally in the country are we seeing it starting to grow? What occupations are needing, again, we're looking at it from a skills-based perspective, but what types of occupations are requiring that skill and what level are they? And then we can also see through our analyses what level in the organization they are, like what type of seniority. And with this, we also can draw on our economic models and forecasting tools to help us forecast and understand how we believe this skill may be needed in the future. So we also incorporate that forecasting exercise as well. And we find that this is a really, really important piece that our stakeholders value, because it really allows that opportunity to continually have the pulse quarterly, what's happening, what's coming down the tube, and get these data cuts on, occupation, region, skill, job type, job level. So that's one thing that we're doing regularly. And then on top of that, similar to some of the stuff that Andrew was talking about, we're continuing to do a lot of work on skills that we know are emerging. They're continuing to be important. I'll call them the power skills, right? So things like social emotional skills, right? We're consistently hearing that these skills are needed. So through work funded by the Future Skills Center, we're continuing to do a lot of work on things like social emotional skills. How can they be taught in adult learning programs, like colleges, for example? How are employers asking for them, right? Because with this information, knowing how employers articulate these skills, what skills exactly they want, then we can help, one, feed that to post-secondary institutions to help them understand what type of learning needs to happen. But it's also valuable for students, right? To know, this is what we need. We need you to be, we need communication to be a top skill. And when you come in, we want to know, okay, you're a problem solver, articulate that. What does that mean, right? And that can be, it's very nebulous. In a job posting, strong problem solving skills, again, it comes down to being able to articulate that, tell the story. And so, there's a large ecosystem of research and work that my colleagues are doing on understanding emerging skills. And then digging deep into some of those larger skill clusters to be able to provide insights, as I said, to post-secondary leaders, government, and other relevant stakeholders. It's our bread and butter.
Maybe building on Heather's point, I think it's so important to use technology to keep up to date with what's happening. There's no way for us to foreshadow what's coming if we don't really keep up with this information. But it's equally as important to be talking to students and talking to job seekers regularly to know the kind of experiences they're having. We recognize, our platform is web-based, so not everybody has access to internet. So how are we really tackling folks in the rural communities and the experiences they're having? And recently we released a product that allows for text-based career support. It's called the Career Copilot, and we've released this specifically so we could support folks in rural communities so we can hear their stories. And going back to Heather's earlier point around getting comfortable with technology, anytime I tell someone I work in the AI space, the first thing they ask me is, are you going to steal my data? And I think we have to get really comfortable with the fact that this is what the world is going to turn into, and technology and AI are going to be a piece of every single thing we do. And we need to get comfortable with what that looks like and start leaning on that a lot more instead of doing how much work we're doing today.
So at Skills for Change, such as with Heather's or Conference Board, we are funded by Future Skills to do a lot of labor market research. But we just completed a research looking at hospitality sector and immigrants and the experience during the COVID-19 pandemic and what gaps there exist and difficulties in getting people employed and retained in that sector. So a lot of what we try to do with the research, and we were funded by the GTA, working with small to medium-sized businesses to understand their needs and how we can help them identify the right talent, and then to create opportunity for them to ensure the talent is embedded through a DEI lens. So a really important focus was around inclusion, not just inclusion and belonging, not just diversifying and having different people. And so a lot of the research we do, we spend a lot of time researching with our clients and their perspective and their experience navigating the labor market. And then we speak to the employers, we do research with them also, and we try to bridge that gap to understand. These are expectations and needs from one group, these are expectation experiences from the other group, how we can bring them a little bit closer together. And that's a lot of the work that we do. And so for us, it's all about having various knowledge products that we can mobilize and share in accessible way, easily digestible way for the job seeker and skills building person and the decision hiring maker in a business who are trying to bring that talent in. So that's the focus that we have.
Certainly, tech-based and more accessible LMI is on our mind as well, and we're supporting partnerships with that kind of focus. But what I would say is it comes down to strengthening the relationships and partnerships between post-secondaries and industries on a regional and a national level. And, that takes a lot of commitment, trust, reciprocity, and resourcing. And, that's the kind of, through those types of partnerships that we support, one of our aims is to facilitate more of that informal flow of LMI insights back and forth between institutions and local industry to support more agility to some of the points you were making, Heather, because not everything is on the job postings that we scrape and we lean on for this kind of information. A lot of labor market information is more informal and needs to be shared around a table with both post-secondaries and employers at that table on a regular basis.
I'm going to throw it out there because I think it's top of mind for lots of people who work in post-secondary. Micro-credentials. That has been a hot topic for the last several years, sometimes positioned as a magic bullet for solving labor market alignment. Really interested to hear your take on the value of micro-credentials, how they fit into helping people move into the labor market. There are no wrong answers. So anything you want to share? I'm very interested in hearing.
For us, we've had many micro-credentialing initiatives funded by the provincial government over the number of years. And you can sort of think of bridging programs are similar. We had longer-term bridging, but smaller bridging, but micro-credentialing through the Skills Development Fund and so on. And it's very, very valuable for the job seeker for many, many reasons. Affordability, access, and time. For people, that's really critical. And also keeping in mind because we do mainly with the adult learners and the delivery mechanisms so that whether you have childcare challenges or caregiver challenges or you're trying to settle in a country, you want to understand what the knowledge and skills you need to have that is helpful, but you don't have a lot of time or money. I think they're brilliant if well designed, and I think it does create opportunities for many people who could have been excluded from the labor market to get closer to and be competitive in a faster way and still have really relevant knowledge that makes them job ready to add value. So I think they're very, very important, and I appreciate the various spaces that people can get them, whether you're jumping on something through Coursera, ADX, or LinkedIn Learning, or going into a college, etc. Anywhere that people can learn and access information that help them to build skills and knowledge and capability is valuable.
I would agree with that. I think we've heard a lot of stories at our organization where micro-credentials are helping people transition into more permanent careers. One of the employment service providers we work with, they were working with an individual that had an hourly retail job after completing an administrative degree at a university. Had an invisible disability, it was difficult for them to find a full-time job. After going through the platform, they were connected with different career pathways and decided to go down the pathway of marketing. They were connected with LinkedIn courses, Coursera courses to your point, and after taking these courses, within 3 months, they were able to secure a permanent annual salary job as a marketing assistant. So it's really, really important to provide these sort of tooling and resources to help folks sort of transition later on in their career as well.
I think the value of micro-credentialing is very nuanced. I think there's so much to it. I think that there's amazing opportunity and success stories, but I think there's so many variables that really impact the outcome. So I don't know if it is the magic bullet for everything, right? I don't think you were implying that by any means. But I think some places that I think it's very, very valuable would be where we have these sectors that are just booming very rapidly. I'm just going to keep picking on cybersecurity because I've been talking about those skills recently. And the technology is changing so rapidly that the curriculum needs to be updated so regularly, and that there's just this massive growing need for people with those skills. So micro-credentialing seems like a magic solution in a lot of ways, right? I do think that there's also this idea that, we as people need to really think of ourselves as lifelong learners, right? More and more, that you don't necessarily just obtain a degree and then you move on into the workforce. You almost need to envision yourself as moving through life in parallel with learning, right? And you might pop in and out of or engage with a post-secondary or higher education training institution at different times throughout your career for different purposes. And that allows you to, remain responsive to what's happening in the labor market, to be able to transition your skills to perhaps grow or maybe just, take on something you're more interested in. And I think micro-credentials can be, a really interesting way or a very important way to really help with that lifelong learning, to ensure that people are staying up to date, in touch with what's happening, or simply being able to make important career pivots, right? So I think there are these very useful tools or ways in which micro-credentials can be used, but it also is relatively new, right? The term micro-credentialing, these types of sort of, smaller training, it's not like this concept is brand new, right? But in terms of seeing, what it really does, and being able to really get clear outcomes on how it's, supporting people long-term, evidence, I'm really interested to dig deeper into that. I know that'll be an emerging priority because I talk to a lot of post-secondary leaders. Some are like, yeah, we got to do this. Some are like, I don't know, how do I do this? Some are like, I don't know if it is the right thing, right? Maybe it's not for me, or maybe I'm not in the right space. So I think we need more evidence on that. And I think we need to, to Andrew's point, sometimes it is really getting into a room and really digging into it a bit more to really tease out those nuances.
I don't disagree with the potential for micro-credentials, as my colleagues have described. I think the challenge really is on the quality and especially on the consistency of those, and ensuring that they're employer-led. And number three, I think there's a lot of work to be done to build the evidence base around. Yes. Especially the skills articulation side, on both the employer's side, because to be frank, most of the employers I speak with are aren't looking for micro-credentials specifically in terms of their top skills priorities that they articulate to me. I hear a lot about the need for intensive project managers in construction, to name a conversation from this week. They don't want a project manager with a micro-credential. They want someone with a degree. There is a need for them, I know, but we need to build the evidence base there and understand how both the perspective from the student side and the employer side to build, I think, better quality across the system. For all the reasons that my colleagues articulated, it's important. I think there's a lot of work to do.
It's a great panel, and I have a million more questions, but I think it's time to allow questions from the audience. So there's microphones on either side of the room. So if you want to ask a question, please come up, identify yourself and your organization, and if it's directed to a specific person, you can do that, or the panel can jump in on it.
Okay. So I'm Nick. I'm an organization called People Research and Strategy. We're based out of the East Coast, but I previously worked at ONCAT, so that's why I'm here for conference. So I had a question for anyone on the panel, and also thank you so much for letting me share to this point. So my question is around the fact that I kept hearing the notion of socio-emotional skills being mentioned. And I immediately end up thinking of, was it Saran that had mentioned the point about like thinking about the employer, not thinking about the immigrant to the country, the newcomer to the country. That I have a similar kind of analogous line of thinking around things like neurodiversity when I think about that. And so I've got lots of folks in my family community who are neurodiverse people. And that feels like an analogous thing. It feels like I know that there's employers who are trying to serve customers who are not very open-minded by and large, and who are expecting lots of really strong, robust socio-emotional skills. And so we go to the students and we say, let's develop those in you so that you can get a company what they want, so that they can serve a client base that they want in the ways that they want. And I'm just super curious to hear like what types of discussions you're having around neurodiversity, high social anxiety, different ways in which people have, especially larger barriers to meet those kind of demands, it seems, as you're saying, from employers, and what amount of work you do with employers or with the populations more generally to have them kind of say like, actually, everyone doesn't have to be the same in those. There are lots of ways in which you can be well served by folks.
I'd like to jump in there.
I mean, I can jump in, and thank you for that, and that's a very good point. We do a lot of work on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and emphasizing a lot recently on the belonging aspect of that. And so when we work with employers and they have a position and we get a job description and then we get detailed profile and we start digging into it, and let's say it's a client-facing role and there's assumption you need to be extraordinarily extroverted and personable in order to do that work. And so we ask the why. Why do you need to be the loudest voice in the room to be good at customer service? What exactly are you looking for? Dig a little bit deeper and say, well, we really want someone who is very detail-oriented, patient, listen very carefully, thoughtful, understand how a product or solution respond and match. So do you need an extrovert? Because what we're doing is eliminating a broad swath of the talent that's available. So we work very closely with the employers to talk about not this generic idea of what is someone who is socially strong and got good emotional skills, emotional intelligence, and can come in and build relationships, problem solve, can demonstrate self-awareness, respect for others. There are different people in different stages with different capabilities who can demonstrate that. And you need to be able to meet the people where they are and adjust your expectations when you're doing interviewing and selecting of people to join your organization. Because I am the most outgoing and personable, because I'm actually able to articulate very smoothly and effectively, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm maybe the best candidate. It's just that I'm very good at speaking well. So, someone's accent is not, indicator of their intelligence. You need to pull back from that. So there's many things that we work with them to understand what would make a really good employee. It's not the same as your other good employee. That's something that we want to be able to do, and that's what we do. We work well with employers to bring that mindset in. And so when we talk about diversifying the workplace, we move beyond the things that we see, or gender, or race, ethnicity and religion and sexual identity, etc., neurodivergence is very critical. Age, class, all those things are considered. We try to, for example, we have offices in Toronto in low-income developing communities where we know that our clients from those communities are facing discrimination based on their addresses. And so we talk to employees, why is that? And how do you eliminate that from your hiring process? So no longer requiring someone's address for an application, I think is some of the steps that some of our employers actually started doing, because they removed that discrimination that is coming, and it's from, they're coming from that community. Oof, I don't know if they would really fit in. Why? What's that assumption? So those are the things that we try to do. It's a lot of hard work. Not everybody is open to it, and we get to see those barriers that people have, conscious and unconscious, and we try to work with them into breaking that down.
Yeah, if I can add, we've released, Nick, your name is, right? Yeah, we've released a few reports on neuro-inclusivity in the past year or two. So happy to get in touch and share those with you if you're interested. So we're really starting to dig into neuro-inclusivity and finding ways to support neuro-affirming spaces, not only in the workplace, but also looking at it even downstream in the PSI space, right? And so, building, I think what I understand is building the analogy on is it the neurodiverse person's role to try and convince the employer or justify, right? And so what we're really hearing is that there is this growing through conversations with some employers, there is a growing interest to find ways to be able to better support neuro-inclusive talent, and not just support them, because it's one thing to get the job, right? But oftentimes oh yes, we really want to support neuro-inclusive hiring practices. And what we've heard through interviews with self-identified neurodiverse individuals is that getting in the door is really not even the battle, right? Sometimes it can be, I don't want to, but it's actually finding career pathways that are supportive of neuro-inclusive talent, and that, that talent is subject to evaluations with their leaders that are actually in line or fair with their neuro-inclusivity. And so this is something we've been working with employers, working with neurodivergent talent and advocacy organizations, and as well we're just in the process of starting a new project which really looks specifically at neuro-inclusivity at the post-secondary level. So looking at how can post-secondary leaders find ways to support neuro-inclusive learners throughout the learning process in a way that is supportive and conducive to their needs, because a lot of times it's invisible, there's a lot of red tape, or it can just be an uncomfortable experience. So we're really looking to be able to dig into that and then provide really clear evidence and recommendations for post-secondary leaders. So this is something that's near and dear to me and we're doing a lot of work on. So happy, I could talk about it way too much, so I'll cut myself off.
Thank you, really interesting projects. I see there's somebody at the microphone.
Hi, I'm Natasha Shaiba. I work for Future Skills Center that if you the panelists mentioned, and we do fund quite a few projects in the field that supposed to support newcomers. I will try to phrase it that it sounds like a question, but I also want to bring up my own lived experiences of a newcomer and transitioning to the labor market in Canada. And when I was when I be rejected for lack of Canadian experience, and I could relate so much to what was mentioned by the panelists. So first, the comments that as an experience of going to employment centers, working through the bridging programs, working with different partners in the field to get connected with the labor market, where I observed that there was a lack of collaboration. Felt like the partners were fighting for limited resources, that's why they were not collaborating. Second one, that although we heard on the Campus Board of Canada mentioned the research being produced, felt like the programs were not informed by that research. Felt like most of the programs were informed by what the funder dictated, and they were like meeting the founders' needs. My question is, how can those synergies be built? Like right now, the panelists are somewhat in the same field. Like I wonder if the practice speak to each other. Do you use each other's reports? And do you collaborate? If yes, how? If not, how those synergies can be built? I just wonder. Thank you so much.
Well, as a CEO of a charity who has a lot of bosses, as in all funders, one of the big challenges for us with program design and development, and which is why we appreciate some of the work the Future Skills Center is doing, is the importance of failing and learning from that failure that should be embedded in the way we deliver programming. But we are not given that opportunity to do so. You have very particular targets, very quantitative. There's not a lot of time for learning and evaluation. From a practical standpoint, it's you do monitoring and evaluation related to the program delivery, but really from a long-term impact of the work that we're doing. And so we have to start making that argument, first with funders, to be open to say that sometimes the way you initially design a program when you started implementing it, you need to give us flexibility to pivot when we see difficulties without penalizing our ability to sustain ourselves because you may pull back funding. If the program is not being delivered and we've done all the prescriptive steps, but we see there's a gap or some unknown that we were unaware of before we designed a new afforded funding, because frankly, we write a proposal and we hear a year later. Things have shifted, needs have changed, dynamics have shifted, but we are now tasked with delivering this project. So we need to get the funders to be comfortable that certain initiatives should be learning initiatives where we figure out what worked, what doesn't work, why it didn't work, and give us an opportunity to fail. And that would help hopefully promote innovation and chance-taking in the sector. Create an opportunity for collaboration with various stakeholders, take time, and money. And the pace of go and deliver, make an outcome, prevents a lot of organizations to create space to think, to stop to think, to evaluate data, infuse that data in your decision making, your program design, to pivot, shift, learn from that. Because again, you need to write that report, and you need to submit, how you've delivered and outcomes, but we never get to measure the impact. So some things that we have done as Skills for Change that really allowed us to have better conversations with the various stakeholders that you've mentioned is, for some of our programs, we've done a social return on investment analysis to be able to say, this is your dollar that you've invested in us, this is the kind of social impact that's been made, but at the same time, we also showed how we didn't do well. We had to, and this is very hard to do in the organization, to admit that we didn't do this thing well and to learn and to change, because we want every program to be successful because that means you get more money. But we needed to step back and learn why wasn't it successful, and to change the measurements of success and be comfortable to then turn around and make good rationale to our funders why this approach is necessary. And we did that, and we were quite surprised. They were quite open to it because we forgot. They have targets too. And they want to be successful, and they want good data to make good decisions, and they want to ensure that the investment that they're making is valuable. So instead of having that sort of they're our bosses and knocking, and they're just over here to monitor our success, we started shifting. We're collaborating with you. We're helping you with your mandate, Province of Ontario. Thank you. We're key to your ability to meet your targets. So we want to help you in doing that. We'll give you good data, and we are a partner. We're no longer here and you're here. We're collaborators. That is a very difficult shift to make, as we're just thinking of sustaining our jobs, sustaining the revenue size of our organization, and not rocking the boat. That is a problem, and I think that is something that if we can, as organizations, shift a little bit, it will make us be a lot more impactful in the work that we're doing. But to be very honest, we do not have the money and the time to do that very well. So we need a bit of that in order to be able to stop, think, and analyze, and innovate as much as we can.
Really fascinating comments, Serena. And I like the notion of creating opportunities for more developmental work, developmental evaluation and the rollout of projects, and supporting innovation by allowing for pilots that may fail and this kind of thing. it's tough, the space that we work within, frankly, we don't typically have the kind of time and resources to do that, to be totally frank. But I think it's an ongoing challenge within our sector. I think, your work at Future Skills Center, I know because we collaborate closely with Blueprint AD, I know they have put a lot of thought towards that, towards the role of developmental evaluation and lessons learned and supporting pivots in these kinds of interventions. It's it's one of those complex challenges that I think, I don't have a solution to it, to be frank. I like the idea of it. Do we typically have the time and the resources for it? No. But it would be nice to see, and I like the notion of pushing back, with your collaborators and or funders to create more space for learning in general.
One really simple thing we've started to do nowadays is hosting a community of practice. Oftentimes, we'll meet employment service providers at different locations that don't know that the other location is using tools that are helping them so much. So what we've started doing is hosting tables, round tables, and communities of practice for folks to come together and share things that are working and things that are not working. And in the new year, we're hoping to sort of make this information more publicly available. And it doesn't solve the problem completely, but I think it's a small step towards that knowledge sharing piece.
Oh, I see a question from.
Hi, I'm Rachel Hitt from ONCAT. I just wonder if we could pull away a little bit from the really fantastic information that we're getting from you, and just because you're all connected to labor market information, for the work that you do, if you could make some comments about emerging labor market trends, different sectors that you see, like if you can forecast into the future, asking for a friend as well. That's how my daughter in post-secondary. But just because you're here and you all have this sort of wealth of information to share, can we just ask a little bit for you to say a little bit about that?
Who wants to go? I'll kick it off because you'll all take mine if I don't say it first.
Go.
I think we're seeing a lot of people talk about green career pathways. We're working with a number of employers, and we've talked a lot about this demand-driven approach where we work with employers to create pathways to specific careers. And the one that comes up every day for me nowadays is green career pathways. We're seeing organizations put together ESG strategies. We're seeing a larger focus on global warming and what's happening around the world. And in line with that, we're seeing a number of roles pop up in that green space, and we expect that sector to continue to grow in the near future.
Building on that, so what we try to do at Skills for Change, we've actually moved into the green climate action and green jobs, but we focused on 5 communities in Toronto as highly racialized and low-income youth, together with TD Ready Commitment funding to get racialized youth to explore green sector jobs. So when we look at labor market data, we try to say who are excluded from being able to access those opportunities and how we can get them prepared to consider that. And so through our Youth Climate Action Initiative and through using labor market information with the green sector, we went to TD Bank and said, we are not environmental organization. We have a jobs and skills building, and we want to get young people. And they go, sure, here's $1 million, get it done. And part of that was creating youth leaders to take on those opportunities. So what I'm trying to say is, when we look at new career pathways and opportunities, and as you're thinking about it and moving forward, is to consider who have the opportunity to access those opportunities. And if they're excluded, how do we bring that information to them? So when you hear from the conference board and you see a lot of data being pushed through and you start sharing that, you need to be able to say who does not have access. I think that's something, I mean, I'm not answering your question directly. I just want to bring to the forefront the critical importance of ensuring that those opportunities are widely available for groups who are potentially excluded from awareness and access to those opportunities.
Such a crucial point, right? Because a lot of the sectors that will experience the largest job growth with the transition to net zero by 2050 are sectors with low participation from women and racialized communities. So if you think about manufacturing, construction, we've been delivering, women in STEM programs for how long? The challenge is just going to get more and more difficult in some of those sectors that are experiencing huge job gains in the next couple of decades. So 100% we need to think about who's accessing, and we've been focusing on this one a lot, obviously in collaboration with ISED. So we're doing a lot, in particular on energy. We have a partnership with EcoNext and MUN out in Newfoundland, where we're supporting students with development of entrepreneurial initiatives and then placing them in clean energy startups. And the hydrogen sector is really growing out there. We're doing some work with Calgary Economic Development similarly to support clean energy in Alberta in partnership with 7 post-secondaries there in Calgary. And then also supporting some of the sectors going through this transition are really, really unique. So in Halifax, the Pier and the Port of Halifax are trying to figure out what's the net zero workforce for marine transportation, right? And I'm sure I ordered something off of Amazon this week. And we all rely on this sector, right? But we don't think about the kinds of skill sets that are involved, and some of it's tech stuff, data analytics, and some of it's to be honest, emerging green skill sets that we're just beginning to tease out through these partnerships. So there's a lot of exciting work in that space.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can, or do you want? I was going to add briefly, my colleagues and I were all talking about, green skills, green jobs. I was talking about this yesterday, so this is also top of mind. You opened your mouth, I'm going to say it before I think it, and you're like, greens, oh my gosh, you got it. But so it's good you went first, right? You totally knew what was about to happen. So, I definitely think, we were talking about green skills, and then some people who I was talking with I hate the word green skills and green jobs. I'm not no shade or anything like that. And when I push to be well, why? And it's well, yes, there are some jobs that are really, really important to, and very technical and related to infrastructure that is required for more sustainable practices, right? Maybe these would be, I'm going to think about how many skilled tradespeople right now, for example, there are new jobs, new ways of looking at things, right? I remember you telling me a long time ago, a mechanic, needs to know how to service a Tesla. I remember you mentioned that to me, and I'd never even seen a Tesla or something like that. And now really thinking about training people to have these very technical skills to be able to do these jobs that are required right now that support sustainability. But then for those who push back, who are it's more than just the green jobs. It's more than just making sure that mechanics, sorry, I don't even know if this is irrelevant or if you remember this conversation we had years ago, but it's not just about the mechanic being able to service electric vehicles today. It's also about being able to instill, this might sound a bit sort of fluffy, but bear with me here, instill a sustainability mindset in all of our work. And so you're what skills? Well, it's not, it really is at every part of one's learning journey now. If you are of the mind that we are facing a climate crisis right now, then really thinking about skills and mindsets being, that sustainability skills, whatever you want to call them, have to be embedded at all different levels of the education space. I tend to focus a lot on higher education, and the truth is I really believe you need to be telling kindergartners this is what we need, right? Really that early learning. That's a rabbit hole, so I'm going to pause myself now. But what I'm saying is that I really think, to really build on my colleagues, is it's green skills, yes, for some of these technical roles that are either being created now or we don't even know that they're going to be created, but building technical skills that are relevant to these jobs that are related to green infrastructure, et cetera, are really important. But it's also about being able to develop a green mindset and implement training that's going to support that at post-secondary across the board. I think that's really, really critical.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what a great panel. Unfortunately, we are at time. So thank you so much to Andrew, to Heather, to Vaishnavi, and to Sarana for your amazing insights. We will take that back to ONCAT to inform the work that we do, because we know when students come to us, Yes, they may be looking for a pathway, but maybe something didn't go right. And they're looking to make that change. And how do we help them make that change, knowing that ultimately their goal is going to be a labor market opportunity? So all of the work that you do supports the work that we do. So we really, really appreciate it. So thank you very much.